do here is the first part of this is just on the system as a whole, and I'll go through that pretty quickly. Then the rest of it's what's going on here on this campus. And I want to start just by showing you where the money comes from. On this, where does all the money come from? And it's about a $300 million a year organization. Just this campus. This is this campus only. And you can see 36% from the state. Grants and contracts are mostly federal grants, some state grants. We're not talking research grants for the most part. That's going to be, we're going to talk a lot about the auxiliaries, which I think in this, at the CSU system and the UC system, it has like mythical proportions. But let me say this, the way it happens at universities where I work in Eastern Michigan, there is no separate, everything's in one financial statement. And remember those strict walls on those auxiliaries, you can't touch those. But when I was here in 11 and 12, some of you are too young to remember this, but you remember they gave the presidents of the CSUs, they gave them bonuses, and they used all the auxiliaries to, and so these strict walls between the auxiliaries and the university do not exist. And we will dig in to the auxiliaries here. And my goal here is for you guys to have a better feel of where the money's coming from, where it's going, can they afford to pay what you're asking for, and also what's going on in this campus. Enrollment, graduation rates. Not that and my guess is you guys know all this, but I have lived with your university for the last week or two, on paper. And one of the reasons I came here a couple hours early, just kind of walk around, and first of all, everything does look crowded. And enrollment, because I have not seen enrollment like, it just took off here in the last year. You guys have had a huge increase in enrollment, which is obviously good. So let's see what happens. So overall, the system's doing well, the state's doing well, the campus itself is doing very well, a lot of reserves, as we'll talk about in cash flows. And the administration, they're growing more than faculty, and they're not hiring, as we'll show you. So versus the system as a whole, somewhat complicated system, 23 campuses. For these university-related organizations, there's 4 different ones here at CSULA. There's 4 different, what I think used to be called auxiliaries, but now they're technically called component units. They're under the control. The thing about these 4 organizations, they are completely under the control of the university itself and the chancellor's office, etc. So, and we'll look at all of those. So this is the system. This is something I presented at fact finding. The system as a whole. So we got the university, the component units, and the total CSU system. $17.6 billion of assets. And so we're going to figure out. So we have assets and things they've got, then the liabilities, the debt, and then the difference between the blue minus the red is the green. Those are the net assets. So we're going to ask how much of this $8.5 billion, or 2.7 here, the auxiliaries, and 5.8 the universities, how much are reserves that they really have and can tap into, and how much should they need to keep? It's like a savings account. You want to have some, but I think the bottom line, as I'll show you, is the CSU system has way more than they'll ever need. And that's just the way it is. So, and I'll skip that. This is the state of California. These are estimates. It's something called the LAO stands for Legislative Analyst Office. They're the ones that predict. They're supposedly nonpartisan. I don't know what that means. I know what the word nonpartisan means. I'm not quite sure what it means here in California. How nonpartisan, what kind of reputation they have for being honest. Obviously, the governor's office has gone back and forth between Republicans and Democrats. I think, didn't California used to have a celebrity governor? Maybe I'm wrong.
Still do.
Jerry Brown used to be Jerry. Jerry Brown is not the Jerry Brown that he used to be. This is not a liberal governor you have, by any stretch. But you could live in Michigan, where we have a right-to-work state, a Republican governor, a Republican House, and a Republican Senate.
And snow.
And snow. And so you can come at any time. So anyway, they did their predicting. They did some in November, then they updated their predictions in January on the future revenue. You can see the personal income taxes dominate, but sales tax and corporate taxes, they call these the big three taxes. That's what they refer to here in the state. This increase here, the citizens of this state voted to increase the income tax on the wealthiest citizens back in 2011, 2012. The citizens in the state of Oregon did the same thing about that money. So that's what's going on in the state. This is the appropriation for all the CSU campuses, and you can see we've had 2 big drops. And this has happened, so the projections are for this to keep going up, but these are what is going to happen. These are the percentage changes in the appropriation. You can see a 27% drop, and we'll compare these, this is the appropriation for the system as a whole, and you'll see I'll be comparing this to what happened on this campus, what happened to the appropriation here, locally. And you can see the 2 big drops, and then we're in a period of relative prosperity. And here's one of the big takeaways, and I've been working with Alice Sunshine. I don't know many of you know Alice, who's the communications director. So we've been working on some stuff over the last 2 days of this week, over the last 3 days of this week. Yeah, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Let's get this straight. That says thousands. So that means we add 3 zeros. So this dark green, unrestricted, what does unrestricted mean? For lack of a better term, unrestricted means unrestricted. Well, I'm sorry, that's right. The other side, we spent, in that fact-finding hearing, most of the time of the cross-examination of me was, it's really not unrestricted. It's spoken for, we can't spend it, it's in the colleges. I mean, it's in the campuses, and then the campuses say it's in the colleges, and it can't be touched, which is all fanciful, because we have external auditors that put it here, and the bottom line is that's over $2 billion. That's a lot of money. No matter, you don't even need a denominator to know that $2 billion is big. But we're going to give you some denominators to show you that $2 billion is pretty big. And so,
can I ask you something? Because I read a CSU administrator's response to that fairly recently, within the last few weeks, and they said something like the reserves are the equivalent of 2 or 3 months of operating expenses.
We're getting there.
Okay,
we're about to get there. And in fact, your statement is timely, because in what Jen wrote to me just now, what they said, they have about 3 or 4 months, and they now say, their person testified at hearing that they want 6 months.
Right, right.
Which is just which is completely made up and more than you'll ever need. But your point on 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, it really is the crux of their argument as to why they don't want to pay. We need to keep this because earthquakes happen in the state, which I assume they do, and Jerry Brown may not be the governor forever, and it's possible Donald Trump could move here and run for governor. I mean, they're making stuff up, isn't it? But that is the entire crux of the other side's argument, is that we need more. We have huge reserves, but they're still not enough. It's really their argument. Now, the reserves, where do they come from? What these are the annual cash flows. This is all the cash in, all the state money, all the tuition money, all the grant money, all the money that I just spent eating salad downstairs. That's in there too. All that money. Less paying everybody, paying the big cash out is paying for the employees, paying the vendors, paying the suppliers. So in 2015, the CSU system generated over $500 million in excess cash. Not just cash in. We're talking cash in, less cash out was $500 million. The reserves are growing because, now this, that's my editorial comment on those furloughs. You guys are all too young to have been here in 2011. Remember the furloughs? They did that to you, and look what the result was. What they'll say is, this scared the SHIT out of us. And so we thought that this was going to turn negative. They still had over $100 million in cash flows. But so they went ahead and they said, you know what, we're not going to pay you. So they did this. The state, so this is artificially high. The state going down contributed to some of this. But now we've got 3 years in a row of incredible increase. These are annual cash flows. And so the cash flows go into the reserves, and the reserves grow, and everyone goes home happy. Now, this puts the raises in context. this here, the cost of a raise, you guys all know what these terms mean, and then a Me Too clause means if they give you guys raises, there are other unions that they have to give. You understand what I'm saying? The same raises too. I'm paraphrasing. That's really about what it is. So you can see how easily they can handle what's being asked for. This fight for 5 is not some people, the administration, the way they said that this 5% raise is astronomical is the term they use. As if somehow.
Wow, what is wrong with these people?
Yeah, exactly. That's why I said they're not the nicest people in the world. I'm sorry. Again, I don't mean to impugn like they go home and they act badly, to their spouses, but they're not. I think Molly introduced me to someone. Can I say what I think? Am I among friends here? Okay. I think that how could you justify what they're doing given the numbers here? That's what I keep saying to myself. Why? How is it? And I've been looking into finance at CSU for a while now. And to me, the only explanation I have is their salaries. Is a way to justify, to look good before the board of trustees, the bond raters, to keep their salaries the way they are, and everything kind of rolls the way it is. But it's not right. It's just not right. Have you guys heard about deferred maintenance? They ever mentioned that to you? Mm-hmm. Deferred maintenance is not an accounting term. It doesn't exist on any balance sheet, income statement, statement of cash flows. Deferred maintenance is this. It's administrators saying our buildings are crumbling and we can't afford to pay you because we have to fix the buildings. That's really all it is. And the problem here is that the CSU administration convinced the legislature that we need money for this instead of convincing them we need money to pay people who haven't gotten, I'm not going to say you haven't gotten any raise, but the raises, I don't know if you guys have been here for about 10 years, the raises over the last 10 years have been very small. You guys may have noticed this. Maybe you do, maybe you haven't. But they haven't been very good. And so the administration, the other thing we're doing, and we'll see this on this campus, is the increasing use of part-time faculty who are dedicated, hardworking people who are paid miserably and don't have security, don't have the benefits that a lot of us have, and we'll see it on we'll see it on this campus. Now, we come up with a way to score. So now we're going to get to your question. 3 months, 2 months, 4 months. So let's go right. The primary reserve ratio is total reserves divided by annual expenses. So that's how many months of expenses do we need to have in reserves. That's what this ratio is. As you can see, when we do ratio scorings, this ratio is by far the one that's looked at the most. And average is 15 to 25, excellent more than 50. 50% means 6 months. And 25% is really all you need, and that's 1/4 of a year, that's 3 months. And we'll see with the CSU system. So where's the CSU system? Well, without the auxiliaries, which would add another 10 or 15 points to this, you can see they're it's consistently in the 30%. And all these other ratios, we put, what we do here with these scores is we put them in it's just like, we have to figure out a way, we're trying to come up with one number to give the CSU a rating. If I'm grading my accounting students, I give them a grade, right? And that grade is based on what? On exams, assignments, maybe class participation, etc. That's all this is. These are all the different components of that grade. And we're trying to give the CSU system one grade as to how they're doing. And so the grade is from 0 to 5, and you can see it's in the mid to high 3s without the auxiliaries, which knock it up a bit. And so this is trouble down here. That's the max you can get, and that's that. And the big thing is, if you don't believe me, let's say you're the most biased person I've ever heard. You're a brash, obnoxious New Yorker, and you're a union guy, and obviously you're completely biased. And maybe all that is true. However, the bond raters look at the same things, and they The bond rating of the CSU system is AA2. For a system this large, this diverse, to have this kind of bond rating, no university system has this high bond rating. And the reason they have the bond rating, this nation's single largest four-year system, very strong student demand, ample unrestricted liquidity, reserves. Ample means, for lack of a better word, good. And favorable, also for lack of a better word, means good, operating cash flow. So what I showed you is what they say. I didn't write this. This is quotes around. This comes right from the bond report. So this is external validation that the CSU system is doing well. And they also talk about the improved state funding. Challenges, reliance on the state. High balance sheet leverage means a decent amount of debt. There's been a lot of borrowing. And the reason the system borrows is because, think of a private school. We were talking before about USC and Stanford. When USC and Stanford want to build a building, they just call some donor up and they build the building. The donor just gives them money and they build the building. The people that go to places like Eastern Michigan, where I'm at, and the students that go to school in the CSU system, they tend not to be giving millions and millions of dollars to the universities. They give what they can, but it's not the same donor base. And so schools like ours, we have to borrow to build. It's going to be a building that has to be borrowed. But anyway, I think this to me says it all. And doing even better than the state of California. So this graph here, this is the system over time. You can see the state appropriation. And what's happened is that the students are picking up so much of the cost. Grants, a lot of this is from the federal government. The auxiliaries, the pinkish line going up a little bit. And when we say other, by the way, 194 million is a lot of other. But in general, you put all this together and they're able to cover these big declines from the state with increased tuition. And the reason the tuition has been flat is because the state has picked up some of the slack in the last 2 years. Now these are the salary components of our main expenses. Student services, academic support, despite the names of these categories. And some of our CFA members work in these areas. But for the most part, student services and academic support are mostly admin functions. They're mostly non-bargaining unit employees. There's some, but mostly not. In fact, academic support are all your deans and associate deans. They are, I think I'd say with 99.9% certainty, there's no deans in the bargaining unit. Is that a fair?
That's true.
Chair is a different story.
Right.
But deans are not in your bargaining unit.
Not so secure.
That goes without saying. So, institutional support is upper level admin, your vice presidents and above, and then instruction having the least salary increase. I mean, that's a 6% increase in 7 years. And we'll look into what's going on this campus. And so, here I got 2 lines, it's hard to see the colors. The top line, instruction salaries and benefits over total salaries and benefits. This is for the system as a whole. So, the people who teach, and this includes chairs, it doesn't include advisors and counselors, but it basically includes anyone who's being paid to teach at least one class. That's what goes in there, which is a lot of people, obviously, and the vast majority. It's the vast majority of the bargaining units. Not the, it's not 90%, but it's. My guess is I think it's 3/4 to 80% of the bargaining units. And so you can see these salaries barely above 50%. And then the bottom one is when you look at the salaries and benefits of every expense. It's not just, this is just people. So the people who teach get paid barely more than half of the total salaries. This is not even 1/3 of the total expenses at CSU system going to pay people who teach. And we'll see very similar percentages here on this campus. Now these are the auxiliaries. This is for all the campus, all the 92 organizations. So what I put here, these are the surpluses from the university side, and you can see the auxiliaries, rents and deficits back here, but you can see in the lime green, huge surpluses. So we're talking $50, $60 million in surpluses. student union, bookstores, foundations, those sorts of things. And the state of California doing better and better. But having said that, you could feel it almost, even in the presidential campaign. Even though unemployment is now 5.49 here and nationally, there's a lot of people who are not even counted because they've given up. A lot of people who are working part-time, want to work full-time, not in those statistics. So I think good, but not great. So how does California rank versus other states in appropriation? SHEEO is the state higher ed education officers. So this is per capita. You can see California is now 10th. They were 11th last year in appropriation per capita. Wyoming's really big, but 6 people live in Wyoming. So I mean that as a New Yorker, that's what we think. And down here, and we have a union here that just settled the contract at this flagship in New Hampshire. You've heard about live free or die be their motto. No state income tax, no state sales tax. Their tuition is 3 times as large as it is here to go to school at university. A public university, the public flagship in New Hampshire is 3 times as large as it is to go here. Because they just don't support anything that has to do with anything. And it's a nice state, it's pretty to look at, but anyway, California does have slightly higher degree attainment, percentage of adults with bachelor's degree are higher, though the rankings have come a little lower. So now, the rest of the time, we're just going to focus on your campus. So this is CSULA. You know, I think it's an abbreviation. I know it's not exactly, but it saves a lot of space as opposed to writing out Cal State LA. It's a little sciencey to say Cal State LA. Anyway, so here's university. So we're going to figure out how much of these 300 million plus of net assets are really reserves around here. And this is the balance sheet over time. This is what it was now at the end of last year. This is what it is over time. We don't have 15 numbers on the campus-specific level. We've had a big fight. We in CFA have had a big fight with the legislature about transparency, about providing campus-specific data. It's not where it needs to be, but that's for another day. Anyway, how much of these 300 million are true reserves? Well, first, where are the assets coming from? I compared 09 to 14. You can see a $60 million growth in cash and investments. Some building going on, but my guess is there has not been that much construction on this campus. Is that fair to say? Because the numbers don't suggest there's been a lot of building here. Some, but not much. And I didn't notice much in my one circuit around in the car. We kind of driving around the circle there. I didn't notice much. But still.
Off-campus count?
What was that?
There's an off-campus in downtown LA. Does that count?
It would.
But it's not construction, right? Or
It would have to be an asset, it would have to be a building. I mean, unless they own the building, it's not going to show up here. If they're leasing it out, it's not going to show.
They're leasing it.
They're leasing it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not going to show. But here's the walls. You know, you hear about the alleged firm walls. So this is, in the audited financials, they tell us all the transactions between the university, and again, those 4, these are the 4. Cal State Auxiliary, Cal State Foundation, University Student Union Board, and Associated Students Account. Those are the 4. We're not going to leave that. We'll go to. So what I have here are the transactions between those 4 organizations and the main university, back and forth. Payments for salaries, $3 million. Payments for other than salaries, almost $6 million. Payments for all sorts of stuff like that, maybe even what you just described. Accounts receivable. If I got to open the books, if I got to look at the accounting office here at CSULA, what I would see is millions of dollars being transferred back and forth between these auxiliaries and the main university. The idea that somehow this money can't be touched and that's it is obviously not true. Not only does it not get touched, millions changes hands all the time back and forth. And so these are the unrestricted reserves for CSULA only. The red line, what I'm calling a solid level, is 3 months. You know, that's what I'm 25.
And what's that based on? Is that,
Okay, that's a good question. Where does that come from? The bond rate is just, what they've done, you know, you look at hundreds and hundreds of these over many years. How much should you have in order to make sure that you can still operate and still have a good cushion? 6 months of reserves in a nonprofit setting. I'm not saying nonprofits should spend down all their money, and nonprofits are corporations and need to have reserves, but 6 months of reserves for a nonprofit, you've got to ask the question, to what end? To what purpose? 3 months, I mean, let's talk about this. 3 months is about $70 million. That's just reserves that are aligned with CSULA. The actual reserves, and these are unrestricted only, are 100 million. So they have 30 million more than they really need. I'm not saying they should just go out and spend all that 30 million tomorrow, but the point is this. If they were to give a 5% raise just here to all the people who are covered by the bargaining unit, it would not even put very much of a dent in the difference between that red and the top of the green. It wouldn't. And the arguments against it, the number one argument is what was said earlier. That this red line needs to be up here. We need 6 months. But to what? Why do you need 6 months? The bond rate is, when they gave the CSU system a AA rating with a 30%, which is about what this, with a 30% level. Now this level is actually a little higher here on this campus. And I'll show you, we'll see the basic, I'll give you the basic reason why, is as the enrollment has been increasing, they have met the enrollment not by hiring full-time people, but by hiring more and more part-time people. Yeah. You're smirking because you know this?
No, they're increasing class size.
And we'll see class sizes. So, you know, for those of you who have to leave early, that's what I'm going to show you later. Class sizes up and part-time hiring. But you know this, but you know, a lot of what I'm showing you is what all of you know implicitly. I'm showing it to you explicitly. But I think, you know, I'm glad you brought that up about the reserves, because it's really the crux of the argument here. Why do we need so much? To what end? To what end are you building reserves? They want to go to their trustees and say, look at me. They want to go to New York, and they actually go to New York, and they meet with Moody's, they meet with Standard & Poor's, and they say, look at our reserves, aren't they great? And the reason our reserves are so great is because we're so good at managing the money. But what they're really good at is not paying people the right way, and not having the right priorities. And that's what this fight's about. That's why your union is where you're at now, and that's what you're fighting for, is priorities. And so these are the component units. I know there's a lot of numbers, but there's so much that gets said about these things. And again, in most universities, all of this is part of the main university's financial statements. And so here are the auxiliaries, which is mostly here, housing, dining, and bookstore. So everything that goes on downstairs here, next door, and all that kind of stuff. And so these guys actually have, they've been they actually had a surplus this year, but in prior years they run slight deficits. But this year they ran a $4.7 million surplus in this, though in prior years they've had a deficit. The foundation is mostly investments. The University Student Union Board, just the student union itself, they're generating a little bit of cash. Then the associated students, which is very small. But when you put it all together, in 2015, these auxiliaries generated $6.3 million of cash. Extra cash. Everything in, and it's all business. These are supposed to be self-supporting, right? The whole goal here is self-supporting. Well, they're more than self-supporting. So what do they do with this extra money? They pocket it. That's what they do with it. So this is the unrestricted reserves for the component units over the last 5 years. So there's been a tremendous increase. And to me, it's got to be related to the enrollment increase. More students on campus, not necessarily dorm students, but more students parking and paying to park, paying to eat, paying for everything else that goes on around. So the students are paying for this stuff, whether they like it or not. And I'm not saying the prices were outrageous downstairs,
Oh,
but I'm not a big guy when it comes to eating. I mean, anymore. I used to be, but my wife doesn't let me anymore. But the price, I mean, a little salad for $5, I mean, come on. I mean,
and our students are poor.
Yeah.
yeah. I found the prices here a tad high.
Yeah.
Am I right, you guys?
No, they are.
They are, okay. So it's not, it wasn't this one.
Can I ask a question about the auxiliary services?
Go ahead. Hello.
Hi, Howard, how are you?
Which the little one?
He's at piano class.
Okay.
Yeah. So we've heard in the past that, in fact, we were having to take money out of our general fund to subsidize the auxiliary services because in the past they hadn't done well at all. And so the rumor was that we were having to basically pay for their shortfalls. Did you see in your audit
Yeah.
whether they've repaid money that they've borrowed from the?
You don't see repayment. You know, this repaying is all funny money.
Uh-huh.
But your point is still, let me talk about it. The point is still well taken. You see this negative here? That negative tells me that in the past, there's definitely has been a shortfall. And look at this. These are the surpluses. So these are the unrestricted reserves in total. So they barely grew. So my guess is, prior to 2011, we don't have financial statements for these guys before that. They weren't doing that great. Then, starting in 13, 14, so the last 3 years, they have really made money hand over fist. But before that, it seemed, but let me address what you just said in terms of the paying back. They always use this, well, we have to cover them. It's one university. These component units, no offense to the food here, but no one is, if there's no university here, it's not going to exist on its own as a restaurant. It's just not. The only reason, I mean, no, I'm not kidding, the only reason we buy the food here is because the kids are going to school here. I mean, I was the only non-student, I believe, downstairs eating, as I looked around. I mean, why else are they here? They're not, oh yeah, they're just driving away, and they're going to get off one of your 7,000 crowded freeways. I want to eat at Cal State LA and say, yeah, the food is so great and such a good price. No, no, it's one university. These things do not exist in a vacuum. They don't exist, and it is true that prior to here they weren't doing that great, but they've gone from $1 million in excess to now $5 million. And God bless them for doing so, but it has to be a couple of things. More students, and the prices of what they're charging these students has to be higher. That's my guess, is they're charging higher and higher prices. And when you farm out what's going on downstairs to Pollo Loco and Sbarro's, and those people are going to charge whatever they feel like charging. My guess is the university doesn't tell them what to charge. I think they charge whatever they charge, and then the university gets a cut. And they've got a ready audience. I mean, it's hard to park here, right? The students...
Impossible.
Impossible. The students are struggling, you know, they're working, they have families, they're taking classes. They don't have 3 hours to go eat. They can eat here because they're here. It's a ready audience, and I think they use them. And no, are there any students here?
Yes.
I don't mean to say, I think you guys are getting the short end of the stick. Okay.
They're being sold as a market to the services
Yeah.
instead of the services serving the students.
But remember,
Students are here to serve
To serve.
as markets for the.
they wouldn't, I mean, so...
We feel like that.
You feel like that. But your point is, well, I think, but the university administration will say, oh, we had to cover this deficit. Now, before, even when things weren't going that well, the rest of the university was doing fine. But this is just the component unit part. And so doing better and doing the best they've ever done. And so let's take this a step further. This is the universities themselves. Now, I don't have every year here because we don't have financial statement data, but let's talk about 9 and 11. My guess is in both of those years, the auxiliaries probably took in less than they took in less than they spent. So they ran deficits. But look at the rest of the university. The cash flows for them were between $15 and $20 million in 2009 and 2011. 2011, mostly because they furloughed you guys. Because, you know, if they're paying you guys not, They were not paying you to work. Isn't that about the way that happened?
Yeah. They follow also the administrator,
Yeah, and they furloughed everybody.
even the president.
I don't know about it. There were certain people that had, as I remember it, we were here, there were certain people that were essential, remember that had to be here every day. And, but didn't, they told you guys you were teaching Tuesday, Thursday, just don't come in on Wednesday. Still teaching, so you're doing the same thing. Anyway, so, well, I should say 50%, not 5. The excellent level is 50. So here's your 50, here's your 25, that should say 25 and 50. So that's between here and here. And that's the extra, so Nick is doing fine. So these are the excess cash flows, the component units. Not so much here, but they've really taken off. That's at 6.3 million. They've really taken off. This is, and I'm sorry, students, but this is you. You guys are paying for that. Now, yes, in the back.
Yeah, I got a question because, like, based on everything you're saying, the CSU system sounds just like a for-profit company.
Exactly.
Even though it's supposed to be non-profit, right? But then what I don't understand is, what do the administrators get after showing the board of trustee or MODI that there's a high reserve? Because in the private companies, like the CEOs get year-end bonuses and get stock options, right?
Okay.
So is there incentive structures somewhere
Yeah,
to encourage them
okay,
to
I'm
do
glad.
all that?
You asked, so I'm going to answer. I'm allowed to be honest, right, Malik? I'm not holding back here. He asked that question. My honest opinion is what they get is their high salaries. I'm going to say these are the salaries of the top 20 or so administrators here. I didn't put their name. What happens is the Sacramento Bee publishes, these are 2015, Sacramento Bee publishes their names. It doesn't say their positions. So what I do is I go to the university's website, put the person's name in, and say, who are you? Now, when you see administrator 4, that means the person's not working here anymore, and I couldn't find out who that person was. There's a lot of turnover in these admin positions. But the reason they do this, to say, look at me, Board of Trustees, is they get paid. I mean, have you guys, I'm going to show you the faculty salaries here. They're not, I don't know if, maybe you guys are getting paid this much, but that's not what the numbers are telling us.
We would notice the NSF should get paid more.
Well, they do it to justify. Yeah, they do it to justify these salaries. That's why they do it. Because why else would they do it? There's no other reason, and these salaries are high. Now, I'll say this: if I compared these salaries to the same positions I'm going to promote it tomorrow, I have the top 20, they look just like this. They all get paid the same. And around the country, they all get paid the same. This is why they do it.
That's home, that's Maserati, that's...
Yeah.
Because that is maybe more than 400,000.
Well, this, I mean, a chief tech officer, 224,000. A chief financial officer, that's an accountant. I'm an accountant. I can promise you my salary, and you think business school faculty get paid a lot. Right? I also work in a place, we're below you guys on the food chain, if that matters to you. So we don't get, our salaries are lower than yours, whatever that's worth. I'm not complaining, I'm just saying they're lower. Just the way it is. If I didn't like it, it is the Midwest. It is lower cost of living, but we're about 10,000 below you guys or so. But which is fine. I mean, that's all right. But $234,000, I'm sorry. I'm not seeing it. It's just not. I've met the CFO for the system here. No. Not your CFO. The CFO for the system as a whole, and he makes $370 something. It's just not right.
That is what is the worst.
The system.
Pay the people.
Yeah, the system salaries are just astronomical. But they look at, when you look at the UC system and the other systems around, that's what they get paid. So they all look at comparables, but then we don't get paid comparably, as we said. So to me, I know it's a cynical and negative answer, and I don't like to be that way, but it is what I honestly believe, that they do it for their salaries.
So this is
No, that makes a lot of
sense. This is looking more and more like private corporations.
Yeah.
The way that it's divided and how the administration keeps getting wider and wider with people that probably don't need or
Well, look at it this way.
don't need to pay that much.
Well, it's it's the Board of Trustees. If I took a snapshot of the board today versus 10 years ago or 20 years ago, you would see an incredible shift towards people from the corporate sector. And it's nothing against people from the corporate sector, but they take their salaries and their mentality and they brought it to our campuses. Our campuses are now run by people who spent their entire careers in corporate America. It used to be the case that the people who sat on boards were people, some of the employees, people who used to work at universities, people who came from the nonprofit sector. Look at the board of look at your board here. Look at them. It's not what you think. I mean, do you really think it's a bunch of people who are just who are supporting Bernie Sanders and out for social justice? That's not who's on your board. I'm sorry, that's not who's on your board. And in my state, the governor appoints all the boards of trustee members, and we've got 8 Republicans, we've got 8 business people, and this, and the end is that's why we get what we have. And the only way to fight back is what you guys are doing. So the administrators.
They justify their salaries, and they already have done a very good job.
Yeah.
Now, what after that? What's next? I mean, my point is 5,000. I mean, whatever. The money keeps accumulating.
Yeah.
For nothing. I mean, what's happening with all that money? What is that? I mean, that's ours.
Okay, another thing they would say.
Yeah.
So the money accumulating, what you just said.
Yeah.
The reserves are spoken for, they're restricted. We have ideas, and the other, you know what they always say? We got to make sure we keep it affordable. We want to make sure we keep tuition low. We want to keep scholarships high, which they don't care about, but they say they do. We can't charge that much, so we're so reliant on the state, and the state's so unreliable. That's their basic answer. That, you know, Jerry Brown's the governor now, but it could be a Republican next time, which it could, by the way. But it doesn't seem. So anyway, this is the 2 main revenue sources here on this campus. You see the appropriation going up to 17. I don't have the red line continuing because we don't know what's going on here yet, but it's definitely going up. There's the enrollment increase, oh my goodness. So now what I did here, and I don't know what you guys think of this. I've never done this before, so I'm always looking for new stuff. I got another thing I'd never done before. I'll show you in a couple of slides. I compared the ratio of tuition to state appropriation. These are all places I've been, and I haven't been. You know, we did a thing with, well, say this is the LA Community Colleges. We were there with them a couple of years ago. So this tells me that tuition is very low compared to the state, and even here. So what this is telling me is the red line's below the yellow. For the places more than 100%, it's the opposite. Tuition is bigger than the state appropriation. And you can see even for the UC system as a whole. This is University of Connecticut, this is all of CSU, the Nevada Public System, Nevada System of Higher Education. Look at Ohio, look at Arizona State, look at Washington, look at Michigan, look at this. University of Oregon. The state appropriation is 7% of the total revenue. That's it. So these are places, so the administration can say with some justification, at least we're supporting higher ed at some level. I don't think it's the administration. I think it's you, the people, who have made sure that the legislature is democratic. I'm telling you, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin have gone all Republican. The fight, it's not, I mean, the sexy stuff is Trump and Bernie and all that. What's more important is what happens at the state legislature in terms of what's going to happen to us here on our public university campuses. And in most of these states that are down here, it's Republicans who have taken over the states. Nothing against Republicans, just everything. I mean that in the nicest way possible, in a very nice, positive way. Anyway, even having said this, you can see the total revenues keep going up for the university. Now, discounting. Here, what is discounting? A lot of numbers here. Let's just look at 14. This is the think of this as the sticker price. This is the discount off the sticker price, and this is what the kids actually pay. You can see it's 50%, and it's been that for 5 years. So what happened over this time period, this is when the tuition just got jacked up huge. So as the tuition got jacked, remember what happened to tuition fees here? They just got, it just went through the roof around that time. And so this is just on this campus, okay? And you can see they really did increase the amount of aid given to students on the way in. Though the discount rate is now, it was higher here, it's kind of steadying and even lower than it was. So this is what the students and their families have to pay. So this is the appropriation just to CSULA, not the system as a whole, just to this campus. And I also inflation adjusted. So I used 2008 as a base, and you can see the level in 16, still not quite 8. The nominal level in 17 is finally bigger than the nominal level in 2008. But inflation adjusted, still not where it was. So as wonderful as we think the legislature here is, they're still not doing what they can. I'm using Los Angeles area CPI, which is, I think, makes as much sense as anything else. On a per student basis, and you can see the head count enrollment. I mean, it's unbelievable. The growth just. Where are you putting them? Where are you guys putting these students? Anyway, on a per student basis, the appropriation not doing so great either. Now this is, has CSULA gotten the short end of the stick versus the rest of CSU? And the answer is yes, this campus has gotten the short end. The black and gold, which are, I think, your colors, the two big declines, this campus got a bigger hit than the rest of the system. And what this says, all of CSU less CSULA, all that means, what I did is I look at the whole appropriation, then take out what's here, and then look at the other 22. Because when you do an average, you don't want to include the one you're looking at in the average. So you can see over this, and then over this long period of time, not so good. So.
Do you have a sense of what drove that? Did it have to do with our enrollments? Did it?
It's hard to know why some schools in these 23, I think a certain amount of it is this STEM idea, that some of the campuses that do more STEM get a little better than, now I know there's engineering, I saw biochemistry, I mean, there's plenty of that goes on here. There's plenty of STEM that goes on in this campus. I think you have a whole engineering college, if I'm not mistaken.
So the CSU has the Chancellor's Office has like a bonus it pays to campuses that.
It's hard to know what they do.
Okay.
It's hard to know what they do. I think one place of common ground between people in this room and the administration here is, look, we've gotten screwed. We did a little better here, but these 2 years we really got screwed back here. And even though we're doing a little better the last couple of years, it's still not making up for when we got screwed back here. Right here, that's a lot bigger decline. For some reason in 11-12, from 2011 to 2012, this campus got a lot bigger hit than the system as a whole. The 20% decline here versus a 12% decline for the system as a whole. And it's been better the last couple of years. I know that this year wasn't any good either. The last 3 years have been better, but someone should look at this and say, this shouldn't be happening. Now here's the enrollments, undergrad, grad. So here's head count before I was using FTE. This is everything. This is, you can look at head count. The appropriation data, they typically look at FTE, full-time equivalent students. To me, it's not like one is necessarily better than the other. Head count matters also because they're real people. It's hard to exclude, even if someone's taking 1 class, 2 classes, 7 credit hours, whatever it is, there's still people who are here. So you can look at it both ways. And depending on what I'm looking at, when I look at the appropriation, I tend to look at the FTE because that's how the state looks at it. But when I'm looking at what's going on in the camp, this is unbelievably low. It's unbelievably low. A lot of detail. One thing, I'm not going to go through all these numbers. One thing that did strike me was the decline in graduate enrollment. Is that something you guys have noticed here on campus?
Yeah, that's
Yes?
because they won't pay faculty to supervise master's theses, so students aren't getting the supervision they need and they're not enrolling in our program.
And they're not coming. I mean, you really see it, though it has increased recently, but 1,000 students, I mean, look at the grad enrollment. It was 2007, and the 16 is fall 15. So this is as recent as you get. I mean, this is the most recent numbers we got. You can see the grad enrollment was 4,500, now it's 3,500. Undergrad, 15,000 to 23,000. That's unbelievable growth. And many of you have been here the whole time, right? I mean, some of you guys have been here this whole time. And you've seen it. And so overall, a 53% increase in undergrad enrollment, a 21% decline in grad enrollment, and overall 35% increase in enrollment over this time period. And versus the entire CSU, and this is why the appropriation, why are we getting penalized appropriation-wise when we're growing faster than the rest of CSU? So, that's what that says. All right, tuition and fees. I will say this. Tuition has not gone up much in the last several years. So when I look at 07 till now, I see 106% increase, more than doubling. However, almost all that increase came between 07 and 12. I mean, look from 11 to 12, it's hard to see. $4,800 in 2011, $6,100 in 2012. For a public, that's just an unbelievable increase in 1 year. And then we've seen very little change over the last several years.
Can I ask
Go ahead.
just real quick, maybe it's the next slide, but you know, they also adopted student success fees on this campus as a sneaky way to get students to pay more.
You know,
Are those in?
well, I mean, it's very relevant here. It's a very relevant question. When I look at when I prepare this, it's not very exciting, by the way, preparing this. But when I do prepare this, the CSU system sets a tuition rate, right? And then each campus has, and the system as a whole was given the student success fee. At San Jose State, they spent it mostly on athletics. And every campus has the discretion as to how to use that money, and even set, I don't know if you guys realize this, there's different fees for different programs, even on your campus. So different students are paying different amounts depending on what they're taking, what they're majoring in. I don't know if you guys are aware of that.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but Molly, this is the way they get these. When you know the state says that tuition has remained flat for the last 4 years, but that's not reality here, because they have various fees: a student success fee plus these course fees plus online. Some campuses have an online fee to take an online class. They have an extra online fee just to take in a class online. So you add all that. That's all part of the mix. And so what I'm trying to show here, or what I believe is here, is tuition plus mandatory fees, but not specific program fees. So so this is not exactly what students pay. Not every student is paying. All right, so what I have here is the blue is the revenue, and what happened here is they jacked up tuition, but they gave it all away in discounts. There's a 27% increase in tuition, but remember the discount rate went from 30 to 50, so they basically gave the whole tuition increase away. But the reason they did that is so they can keep the level high. They figured in the short term it would hurt us, but in the long term, we're gonna make that I hate to use this phrase, the new normal. The new normal, we're gonna keep it up there. So that's that. And so the blue is the bottom line tuition revenue. What this university sees, this is all CSULA, by the way. It's not, everything we're doing from this part is all just this campus. We don't know this and this. We don't know what the blue is here. But given these enrollment increases, I mean, in 15, the auxiliaries generated $6 million in extra cash flows. I think the reserves here and the cash flows for 15 and 16 are going to be off the charts. So that's why you guys don't have to listen to me but my advice is don't give in at the negotiating table very easily. You can wait them out, because it's gonna get better and better for them in terms, when we get more data, it's gonna show more and more surpluses, and not less and less. Things are getting better for them. And you guys have just not got, as we'll show you in a second, you have not gotten what you've deserved for a long time. So here's where they spend all the money. You can see only 35% to instruction, and we'll break that down. This is upper level admin, institutional support. All the green stuff, public service, academic support, these are mostly admin functions. Mostly admin functions. And these are definitions of the categories. Institutional support, upper level administration, auxiliaries, housing, dining, bookstore, parking. You do have athletics here. Your athletic director's like made $180,000. I don't know if you played Division I. I don't think you played Division I, do you? Yes, no?
On this campus?
Yeah.
I don't think so,
No,
but I
it's
think
Division
there's
two.
aspirations.
Division 2.
Division II.
I think they have aspirations.
They have aspirations. Another way to take money out of the academic core mission. Perfect. So anyway, these are all numbers. These are millions of dollars. You can see the amount to instruction is kind of flat, right? And so the percentage going to instruction is going down. The two big places it's gone, one is scholarships, but the other is academic support, which is mostly the academic administration. And so this is what that looks like graphically. Here's instruction going down. And so there's also something, now this, I know there's a lot of numbers. Anyone know what IPED stands for? IPED is Institutional Post-Secondary Education Data System. It's U.S. Department of Education. They have to tell us what they spend the breakdown of the money. So when you see instruction being $100 million on the audited financial statements, see that 100.6, everyone see that for instruction? Everybody with me?
Yeah.
You guys are gonna hang with me just for this one math thing, that's it.
We're here.
You see that down there? 100, 566, 185, that's 100.6 million. In IPEDS, there's 6 different categories that make up instruction. Salaries, fringes, plant, that's electricity in the campus, in the academic buildings, depreciation, wear and tear, interest, and then the dreaded other. Look at other. 5 million here, now it's 7 million. What goes on the financial statements is salaries, it's the first guy, so just bear with me, 67 and change, and 25 and change is about 93. 93 and 7 is 100. So these categories, plant, depreciation, and interest, these three, they go in their own categories in the financial statements. But so how do we convert IPEDS to the financial statements? Salaries, benefits, and other. So about 7% of instruction it's mostly consultants. I don't know if when they hire outside consultants and outside lawyers and other people to look at stuff, that's what it is. And they know we've been looking. So they pump up these numbers. I see it more promoted in here, but still we see this going up. And we're gonna focus on these two components of instruction because that's what matters most. So this is instruction, salaries, and benefits. So bear with me here. So here's, you see 67,478? That's 67.5 million. You see 25.660? That's 25.7 million. Adding together, rounding, I get 93 million and change. Total expenses of the whole place, just under 300 million. So barely a third of the total expenses go to instructional salaries and benefits. And you can see what's most damaging is that's declined over time. And the main reason that's declined is because as enrollment has increased, they've hired more part-time people. And again, part-time people are dedicated, but let's face it, they're one thing to the administration. They're cheaper. They're cheaper than lecturers, and they're cheaper than full-time tenured track faculty. That's why they use them. And that's why we see this. And, okay, so just bear with me. So here, I'm teaching class now. I do teach, I do have regular students just like the rest of you. So this first one is, the numerator is everything we pay people who teach, instructional salaries and benefits. The denominator is the total expenses of the university. In this slide, the denominator is all the salaries of everybody who works here. So the numerator is the salaries of the people who teach. The denominator is the salaries and benefits of everyone who works here. And you can see we're at 53.5%, but it was 60.8% back here.
And how do these figures, this and the last slide, compare to other institutions?
We're going to do that in 3 slides.
Cool.
So this is also new. Rudy, some of you guys must know Rudy and I, we're always, besides talking every day, whether you believe it or not, if you listen to our conversations, you would say, boy, what a bunch of geeks. And we are, and this is our new one. We've been working on this for like the last couple weeks, and I'm breaking it out here for the first time, so here you go. Are you guys ready? This is my first time I'm breaking this out. But I think it goes, the reason we did this, because we talked about we talked about me coming here and the strike and all that, and what drove us to look at this is, they're getting more, is the tuition money and the state money, is it all going to pay the teachers? Or is it going somewhere else? That's what we're trying to say. So what we have here, this is the state and tuition money on a per student basis. And then instruction salaries and benefits on a per student basis. First of all, you could just see on a level basis. Not all the money that comes from the state and comes from the students goes to pay those who teach. Now, understanding that universities got to do a lot of other things besides just teach, I understand that. But it certainly doesn't seem that high. Secondly, over this 5-year period, we've seen a 14% increase in the state and tuition money, but a 3% decline in instructional salaries and benefits. So it's clear to me, as the state has given CSULA more, this is just CSULA, by the way, as the state has given this campus more, as you've asked for more from the students, you're not giving it to the people who teach. The administration is not giving it to the people who teach. It's going somewhere else. And where is it going? The administration is where it typically goes. And so that's what I haven't read. The increase in revenue are not all going to instructional costs, which is what the legislature thinks. Every dollar we give goes right into the classroom. And they say, we can only pay these people out of state money. They can pay these people out any way they want. But it's not all going to people who teach. So, you only have to wait 1 slide to answer your question. Peers. Now, there's a lot of stuff that, peers are very important as to who they are. And I looked at your website. I could not find a definitive group of peers. Obviously, one group of peers could just be, I could just use the entire CSU. But there is, in the NSSE data, which is a National Student Survey data, this campus and most of the campuses use the IPEDS peer list. IPEDS produces a list of peers based on your research capabilities, whether you're urban or rural, size, public, private, etc. And this is who the peers are from the IPEDS list. Now, I don't know how you feel about this. I hadn't done this when I was here last time. So, John Jay, San Bernardino, Northeastern State, Oklahoma, Texas, San Antonio, obviously they're pretty close by, Dominguez Hills, Northwestern State, Louisiana, where I was not that long ago, New Jersey City University, Bakersfield, Fresno, and Troy. I think John Jay I know there's a big criminal justice program here, and that's the John Jay College of Criminal Justice, so that makes, just at that level, that makes sense. And so, here's what I have here. So instructional salaries for 2008 and then 2014. So in 2008, CSU was 8% above the average here. So here's the point. These averages here are pretty low. This is just instructional salaries and total. I didn't even have the benefits in here, just salaries. Because when you compare benefits across schools, it gets a little weird. So just salaries. And you can see CSULA is ranked somewhat high, but over this period, from the period we're looking at, CSU is spending 6% less on instruction, while the others are going down. The others are also spending less. So you ask, so the trend, this trend down is more, it's 1% down on the peers, 6% down here. Having said that, the level is still somewhat higher. At the end of 14, 51.7% is the average, and we're CSULA, 53.5. So here are the other CSUs. San Bernardino 51.8, CSUN 53.1, Bakersfield 52, Bakersfield 49.5, Fresno 52.6. So the CSUs are pretty, they're pretty much in the same, very similar. And what this is showing, to fully answer your question, almost all these peers have shown a decline in what they pay people who teach. They're all doing the same thing, hiring more, hiring more part-time people because they're cheaper. So this is the change. This is a fancy graph with this is just, I just know how to use Excel, that's all this is. I'm not the only one in the room that knows how to use Excel, I promise you that. It's not a special skill. So this is saying that CSULA had an 8% drop in what they pay people. This is this table graphic. So here's the level, and these are the changes. All right, this is upper level admin. Institutional support salaries, and the peer average is 13.6. CSULA slightly above the peer average at 14. This is of the salaries that are paid at CSULA, 14, one of every $7 pays them. If I could use the us and them.
So how do I get a job as an administrator at John Jay?
You go to John Jay and you kiss a lot of ass. And you have no principles.
Yeah,
and
that's the
I know you a little bit, I don't think it's going to happen. Right. So here we go, here are the numbers of employees. So here we see it. Look at the part-time employees. These are instructors. T/T is tenure track, and here's non-tenure track. I think the numbers tell more of the story than the graph. Tenure track from 527 to 463, a 12% decline. More than a double. There were 53 non-tenure track. You guys, in the system, they're called lecturers. IPED calls them non-tenure track. The CFA language is lecturers, typically is the word that's used. You can see 53 to 117, part-time 435 to 707.
So NTT would be the full-time lecturer?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm not making any political statement with these labels. I'm using the labels as they appear in IPEDs. Because I know people have different labels for things, but I think if I just stick to what is reported, I can't go wrong. But the data is startling. And there's something called a common data set, which every university has to report. And this there's full-time, big decline and a little increase. There's only 4 years of common data sets on the CSULA website. Let me say this, having been to now 13 or 14 of these campuses, the transparency here is probably the worst of any of the CSU campuses in terms of data that's publicly available for a geek like me.
That's unsurprising.
You're not surprised. I hate to say this, where I'm going tomorrow, Pomona is probably the most transparent of the places I'm going to be to. And for whatever that's worth. I mean, I don't. It doesn't mean I can't do this. Obviously, I've done all this, but there's, instead of 40, they stop. Pomona has the 15, 16 common data set, and they go all the way back to 2000. It's not that these documents don't exist; they just don't put them up there. It's not. I don't think it's meanness. I don't think it's laziness. I just don't think they care. So it's not nastiness. It's not like, it's just somewhere between that. And but look at the data here. Look at the part-times. Unbelievable data. This comes from the Race to the Bottom report, which I know many of you have seen. What this is showing, this goes all the way back to 4. I'm only going back a couple of years. And you can see tenure track down, increase temporary faculty. This is the organizational chart for the president's office. I pulled this right from the website here. It's hard to see this. But president, university council, director of athletics, look at them right up top. University internal auditor, executive director of the Luckman Fine Arts Complex. And here's the provost, kind of down here. I'm not saying the provost is bad, good, or indifferent. I'm not saying anything about that. But can't they have an org chart where the provost is a little closer to the president? I mean, the point that the young lady was making over here, we were talking over here before. This is what corporate America looks like. If I had looked at an organizational chart 10 years ago or 20 years ago here at CSULA, I would see the academic people, I'd see more of them, and I'd see them closer. Now, I don't know how that manifests itself exactly, but this is pretty reflective of what's going on here. Yes?
Do you know of any university or any university system in the country that is less like this?
They're all like this. They're all, that's the thing. You asked about the peers, and I showed you CSULA is doing the same thing. We're fighting this fight everywhere. Everywhere. Your husband Jason, he has no shortage of places to go to, does he? He could be at 5 different places on any given day because this is happening on 5 different places around in the Western region. It's happening everywhere. And the only way we can stop it is by fighting back. And that's why this fight is so important. You guys have to see this through. We have, filling out strike authorization cards. You got to see this all the way through. They're not going to pay attention to anything else. We're not going to change this. I mean, I could give these presentations from today to tomorrow. They won't matter unless you guys fight. They won't. No one cares about my spreadsheets. No one gives a crap. I mean, I know you care a little, but when all is said and done,
We love your spreadsheet.
I appreciate that, but when all is said and done, unless you guys are out there fighting, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't matter. And this is going to keep getting worse. I'm telling you, it's going to keep getting worse.
I would say, well, unfortunately I have to, but as a student, are there any slides that you could probably give to Christian that we
Yeah,
should
I mean, I'm
consider?
going to give you all these slides. I remember, I even saw when I was here last time, I made like a small chart pack of like 5 or 6 slides that I thought were most relevant, and that's what we'll do again.
Because unfortunately, students don't get that.
I understand that. I mean, but still, the students here, they know what's going on. Students are smart. They're very
Oh, yeah,
smart. They get
feel
it.
But
They get it.
once they get to see it in numbers, I
Yeah.
think they'll really feel it. Because otherwise they're like, wait, administration was on our side.
Yeah. Well, all right. I showed this one already. Here are the faculty salaries, and what I find most disturbing here. So I look going back to 10, where I have the AUP salary survey data from here. The reason it's not like the full professor was making 95 and now they're making 93.
It went down?
It went down. It's not, the reason it went down is this. People retire. I don't know if you know this, people sometimes retire, even from here. As wonderful as this place is, sometimes people leave. And they get replaced by either people making less than them or they don't get replaced at all. And the people who retire tend to make more money. So we see, look at the fulls, the associates. The assistants do better. Why? Assistants typically get hired at a market rate. So assistant professors, to the extent there is hiring, they typically do okay. The group, and I see this in every CSU I've been to, is the lecturer group. Now the lecturer group, these are the full-time lecturers. It's not like they're getting paid cuts, but there's more and more being hired at lower and lower salaries. So remember, there's been a doubling of lecturer hiring here at CSULA over the last 7 years. The new people coming in are not, they're making less, you have steps in the contract, right? For the, lecturers have steps. And the new people coming in are going to be well below that. They're not going to have steps yet. And so,
But we just had a change in the contract that should.
well, hopefully that, you did throw,
So that's not reflected yet?
this is
that
just
right?
14,
I see,
15.
I see.
But I mean, this is unbelievable to see this kind of decline.
And Howard, that's not even in real dollars, accounting for inflation.
This does not account for inflation.
Oh, wow. I feel it.
But you asked Molly, and here it is. So here's the, well, you asked, and I knew you could ask that. Seriously, when I was here last time, I mean, you guys made that point to me. I didn't have the inflation adjustment last time, and many times I've been, so I was ready to fight the inflation. And Los Angeles, by the way, the Los Angeles CPI is not very different from the US as a whole. Well, California is the country, I mean, let's face it. That's just the way it is. But here you go. So the lecturers on a nominal basis lost 17, after inflation have lost 22. This is just in this 4 or 5 year period.
I feel it.
Yeah. And as we've stated before, or someone stated, it's more expensive to live here than it is in Michigan. But we have snow and cold weather.
You have heating costs there.
We have solar panels in our house. So, yes, we do. We really do. Real solar panels. Okay, peers. This is that peer list again. CSU at the end of 15, kind of in the middle, a little ahead actually, in all the groups, behind the lecturer group. But what, and then this just shows you there's so many part-time. This is from the race to the bottom. These are all part-time people who get paid less than $40,000 a year. And so this is what's happened to the peers from 11 to 15. So the full-timers were ahead here, but they're still ahead, but less so. Associates, still ahead, but less so. Assistants have done better. The group that's done the worst, the lecturers versus the peers. They've lost 18,000 grand. I mean, 8,000 grand since that time, 16%. The fulls and associates have lost ground. When I say lost ground, you were this much ahead before, now you're still ahead, but by less, so they're catching up. But the lecturers, well, lecturers were 5,000 ahead, now 2,800 behind. Right, last bit, I'm almost done. Degrees conferred, graduations, must be a new doctoral degree that was granted in 14 for the first time. What degree is that, if I guess?
Education.
It's EDD?
Yes.
Good. We have that also, it's great. Just make sure you train these people to not hate labor, not hate unions, because often they wind up working on the other side. So maybe we could have some people working on the other side that understand the benefits of collective bargaining and collective action, also everyone working together. Graduation rates. Now, and the LAO just came out, the Legislative Analysis Office just came out last week with a new analysis of higher ed. The number one thing they kept pointing to was the legislature and the governor does not like he thinks the 4-year graduation rate at the CSU system and the UCs are way too low. And he thinks Jerry Brown thinks everybody should finish in 4 years. Well, Jerry Brown obviously has not talked to a college student recently and not lived the life of a college student. And so they used it in I thought the harshest language, not understanding. I mean, those of us who teach these students, we know them, we know everything about them. Graduating in 4 years, it's just not physically possible. And the financial burden, plus the work burden, plus the family burden, and so that's why we have these very low 4-year rates. And there's the 5-year rate and the 6-year rate. It takes, and we could even go further. By the way, at Pomona, they actually give the 7, 8, 9, and 10-year graduation rates on their website. And what you see, you don't see it here. I can show it to you from Pomona. It's still the case that even from year 6 to 7, a decent number graduate. From 7 to 8, a decent number graduate. It stops at about that. But even from 6 to, the federal graduation rate is a 6-year rate. But my point is, in the CSU system, it's probably an 8-year rate that's most relevant to the students that we teach here. You guys are teaching here. It takes that long. And so I really think the appropriation, where this is all going, is they're going to start basing the appropriation on these 4-year graduation rates here to some extent, which will not help a campus. I mean, and we'll look at some Pell Grant rates in a second. It will not help a campus that serves.
It's not relevant to anything. We're not making songs this year.
No. But I'm just telling. I'm the messenger.
Yeah.
Okay. So here I brought in the Pell Grant rates. You guys know what a Pell Grant is? A Pell Grant is based. You have to have a family income's got to be below a certain level. No matter what you think of Barack Obama, he did significantly increase Pell Grants in 2009, and he has fought very hard to keep Pell Grants, both the level at which your eligible income level and the amount of the grant, and the Republicans have tried every year to chop it. Every year they put it in the budget, the Republicans, they want to chop Pell Grants. There could be nothing, thinking of mindless. Cutting Pell Grants is like the stupidest thing you could ever imagine. Taking away money from people trying to do the right thing and get ahead. Can't think of anything worse. But look at CSULA. The Pell Grant rate you can see is the highest on the peer list. So you guys are serving, for lack of a better phrase, the lowest income population of anybody in your peers.
I think that's actually going down. I think when I came here in 2009.
It was
Then
higher.
that makes sense.
It was higher.
That makes sense.
This is the-
We're squeezing out.
This is the 14 rate. This is the most recent rate we got. So look at what I mean. Hang with me here again. I'm just about done. Correlation with the grad rate and the Pell Grant. The 4-year graduation rate as a negative 0.42 correlation is very high. That means the more Pell Grant students you have, the lower your 4-year graduation rate is going to be. The more Pell Grant graduate students you have, the higher your 6-year rate is going to be. So if we give these kids a chance, they're going to. We got to give them a chance. So looking just at graduation rates, it's mindless. It doesn't. It doesn't make any sense. And so here's a graph. I've got the Pell Grant. So here's CSULA with the highest Pell Grant rate. This is this table graphically. So here's the Pell Grant rate at CSULA at 66%, and there's the graduation rate of 40%. And you can see the schools with lower Pell Grant rates tend to have higher graduation rates, which makes sense. The retention rates, again, this is on the Pomona website. They have the fall 15, the fall 14, back fall 15 rate, and they only have these 4 years here. That means 1 out of every 6 students, these are full-time undergraduate students. Oh, that means 1 of every 6 undergraduate students who started in the fall did not come back the next fall. Think about that. Think about that. And what we need to do to make sure that's a lot of students who came here with high hopes and dreams and leave. And every study shows the #1 reason they're leaving is financial. Obviously there are issues involved, the students have issues, and you're never going to get that 100%. But financial is #1 reason. And now, someone mentioned class size, we finally get to class size. So the way we do class size, the common data set says to us, bear with me here, how many sections have between 2 and 9 students? How many sections have between 10 and 19? How many have between 20 to 29? And then how many have more than 100? And so I'm comparing fall 11 to fall 14. These are the most recent and the most far away common data sets I had from CSULA's website. And you can see much fewer small sections and larger sections here. You can see more 50 to 99, even more 100 plus. It's not that many, but definitely more. The student-faculty ratio that's published went from 20 to 26. And usually that's a bogus number they play around with, but even they admit it. There's no doubt here that this graph, that class sizes have gotten bigger. So students are paying more and getting less, there's no doubt, and taking longer to finish. There's no doubt that's happening.
And being taught by less support.
And being taught by faculty all the time and to give them what they need. So that is that. I'm done.